Right, guys, the Premier League is back. Let's take a look at Matchweek 1 and my fantasy football picks for the weekend. Right, we'll take a look at the first match between Liverpool and Bournemouth Friday night. Key things to look for the Liverpool side is Florian Wirtz's link-up play between Salah and Ekitike. He might be one of the premium picks in fantasy football this year. His price is 9 million, and I suspect he would be one of the highest point scorers of the season. Another thing to look out for is Frimpong's partnership with Salah. We saw in the Community Shield that Frimpong goes more to the byline, pushing Salah more inwards, and he looks to cross more to the far post. So look out for Cody Gakpo and Frimpong's connection in this first match. And we'll look at Liverpool's defensive shape and off-ball play. We saw against Crystal Palace in the Community Shield that Liverpool is very vulnerable to the counter. So I will err on the side of caution when going for Konate or Virgil van Dijk this year in your fantasy premier picks, as I'm not too sure this Liverpool side will have many clean sheets. Here's some interesting facts to look out for. Bournemouth is on a 7-match game week 1 unbeaten run. When you pick Liverpool to win, keep in mind for the last 7 seasons, Bournemouth has won or drew their first game week. The aggregate score between Bournemouth and Liverpool is, however, 23-2, and Bournemouth has failed to win a match against Liverpool in their entire history. My prediction for this match will be a Liverpool 3-2 win. If you're looking at Liverpool players to add to your fantasy team, I'll suggest Florian Wirtz and Mohamed Salah. Okay, so let's take a look at one of the top matchups for the weekend as well, and Aston Villa against Newcastle. So first, let's take a look at Aston Villa. Yes, a few things to look out for, and that is Pau Torres' defensive contributions. Of course, this season, the points tally for defenders and defensive actions and contributions has changed. So I think I'm keeping my eye on is Pau Torres' defensive contribution in this match against Newcastle. Ollie Watkins will be the main man again at Aston Villa, of course, since the January window last season. He was in and out of the team, and starting this season, they don't have much depth in that striking position. So I suspect Ollie Watkins will play most of the matches this season, bar any transfer changes for Aston Villa until now and at the end of the window. And then also, this is a fixture with a potential clean sheet as well. So if you do have any players from Aston Villa, look out for that bonus points for a clean sheet, as I suspect this Newcastle side is pretty weak this match. So things to look out for on Newcastle is, of course, is Anthony Elanga's debut, and it would be interesting to see how Anthony Elanga does in a new team. Of course, at Forest he was great last season, but I wonder how many, or I wonder how much do we contribute his great season last season to his own skill, Nunes, or even Chris Wood, the whole Forest system working in his favor. So it will be interesting to see how he fits in to this Newcastle side. The goalkeeper situation, of course, Newcastle brought in Aaron Ramsdale. So if you do have Nick Pope or Aaron Ramsdale in your fantasy team, I might switch them out for any other goalkeepers, as I think there might be some fixture problems in the beginning of the season for these two to figure out who's going to be the number one keeper in this team. And then, of course, they have tough opening fixtures, Newcastle, starting with Aston Villa, and then next week they will play against Liverpool. So I wouldn't touch a Newcastle player with a 20-foot pole. Basically, what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and also the team is a bit deflated with no incomings, and you might notice in my predicted 11, there's no Alexander Isaac. Very, very, very unlikely he will be playing until at least past the transfer window closes. So that's quite a shame because he was my prediction would be a 2-0 Aston Villa win. Like I said, a possible clean sheet here. And if I have to pick a player from these two teams, I would go with Ollie Watkins in my fantasy Premier League team. So let's take a look at other matches elsewhere. First, I have gone for Brighton 2-1 against Fulham. I don't have any Brighton or Fulham players in my team, but I am looking at Alex Iwobi as he's quite a high point scorer over the last 2 seasons. So he might be a good pick in those Fulham against newly promoted fixtures. One to keep an eye out for. And then Sunderland 0, West Ham 2. When I reveal my team, I'll show you guys that I have Jarrod Bowen. Um, that's just because I think he's going to do good against Sunderland. But now I have to tell you guys, I'm not all that too convinced. Sunderland, of course, brought in a ton of signings. They weren't very good last year in the Championship, so it does stand to reason they won't be good in the Premier League. But stranger things has happened, so I'm still going to stick with Jarrod Bowen. But I think I'm just going to stick with Jarrod Bowen for this one fixture against Sunderland, and and then maybe we'll take a look at Sunderland over this season. They have a lot of players in that squad. Granit Xhaka might be a good pickup, but all these type of players I'm looking at past the first 10 fixtures of this new season to see how's their form and how Sunderland as a team is setting up to play. Then Tottenham 3, Burnley 0. Tottenham, I think, is going to be a very good team to pick players from. They have one of the most easiest fixtures. So, yeah, Tottenham 3, Burnley 0, Burnley newly promoted team. I think that the top player people are snatching up from Burnley is Martin Dubravka, and honestly, I'm not all that sold on Dubravka, even though I did, in fact, pick him for my fantasy Premier League team. And then Wolves 0, Man City 5. Looking at this, I think Wolves is going to be very bad this year. I think Wolves are going to plummet. It might be a relegation team. And yeah, City 5, I think we're going to see a powerful City at the start of the season. They had a good off-season, and yeah, they got knocked out of the Club World Cup, but they're still trying to find their stride. And I think it's just going to be a very, very, very big game for their forwards, especially Haaland, and also looking for Ryan Cherky in that midfield, how he's going to link up. I think it's going to be a good game for Manchester City. And then Forest 1, Brentford 1. For the predictions, I'm playing it like a politician. I'm not too sure. People are saying Brentford is going to be very, very, very bad. They have a set piece coach obviously taking over as manager, and there's question marks around that. Completely understandable. I'm not convinced. I don't think they're going to be that terrible. Forest, of course, last year were a wonderful side until maybe the last 15 matches of the season. But we saw the Santos do the same thing at Wolves. He starts the season very, very, very strong and maybe end a bit weaker. So yeah, Forest might be a weird side to pick players from, but I'll talk more about that when I get to my team. And then, of course, the last match on Monday night, we have Leeds against Everton. I think Leeds 0, Everton 1. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more to say. Hey, let's take a look at one of the top matches this game week, and that's, of course, Chelsea against Crystal Palace. So for Chelsea, Chelsea has a lot of question marks around them this season, not only as a team, but also if you're a fantasy Premier League manager. Cole Palmer, of course, will be one of the top players to have in your team. First thing to look out for is Caicedo's points tally. So with the new defensive contributions, I think Caicedo will be one of the top point scorers this season. He has the most defensive contributions with over the 400, I think it's like 455 defensive contributions. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, I'll keep an eye on Caicedo's points of the game week 1 to see exactly how this defensive contributions work in reality when it comes to the points. Another key thing to look out for, of course, is Cole Palmer. He's picked up by most of the managers, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can pick up where he left off. Of course, last year his numbers dropped a little bit since his breakout season, but he's still a fantastic player. And then, of course, João Pedro might be a solid pick. My only thing with João Pedro and this large Chelsea side is, will João Pedro get consistent starts? He's up against Liam Delap, and I think for the first five pictures of this season, it might be a case of João Pedro starts one, Liam Delap starts another game, and they're being substituted for each other. And I think maybe after game week 5, one of them will be the established striker, and then we can look from there. But yeah, so far, João Pedro looks like an exciting pick for us fantasy managers. I think his price is a bit high, considering he might not play every game. But then again, if we look at his contributions, he's a massive assist and massive goal scorer. I think I think João Pedro is going to be big this season for Crystal Palace. So key things to look out for Crystal Palace is potentially Eze's last match for Crystal Palace. So if you want to pick up Eze, this might be the match to do it, as he's being heavily linked with Tottenham. And once he goes to one of those big six clubs, I suspect his price will go massively up as well. So keep an eye on Eze. And then Mateta is set up for a huge season. Of course, Mateta, one of the top strikers in the league. The only problem with Mateta, and that's why I didn't pick him for my team, is he gets going on the second half of the season. For the last two seasons, he scored 80% of his goals past January. So he does start slow. Interesting to see if he can get it going a bit earlier this season. Maybe then he would be a good pickup, but history suggests after that January window, he's a very good pickup for your team. He just goes lights out for the last games of the season. So keep an eye on Mateta. So my predictions would be 2-1 Chelsea. Players to look out for in this Chelsea team. If you have to pick players, I will go for Cole Palmer and Marco Corella. Marco Corella is a premium defensive pick, but he's of course a very progressive playing fullback, which means assist. The occasional goal. Look out for that. Okay, now this is the big one. The Sunday match. I wouldn't, before we start here, I wouldn't have any players from either of these two teams in my Fantasy Premier League team for at least game week 5. But we'll look at it either way. Of course, both these clubs have massive fan bases. But let's take a look at Manchester United. So, key things to look for is this Sesko debut. Sesko currently is 7.5 million as a striking option. And that's not too bad. I think Sesko might be a 15 goal season player. And starting alongside Cunha and Mabumo, I think I think whoever the striker is going to end up being at Manchester United, I think that player is going to be set up for success. Bruno Fernandes is one of the best midfielders in the league, there's no doubt, and he's the best player in this team. He's going to start every minute of every game this whole season. If you have to pick a player from Manchester United, go for Bruno Fernandes. And then Patrick Drogu. I misspelled his name here. It's Patrick Dorgru. It's the O before the R. My bad. I think he's going to be a pivotal player in this Manchester United team this season. Let's take a look at Arsenal. Of course, Arsenal brought in Martin Zubimendi, and also I think is going to maybe start this match is Christian Norgard. Martin Zubimendi, of course, is more hyped, but Norgard has played in the Premier League, so it might be. I think he might start this game, and Zubimendi being eased into it. And then, of course, Victor Gyökeres, I believe, is going to start. There's no doubt about it. Listen, there's a lot of hype around Gyökeres. He scored 52 goals last season in all competitions for Sporting, but he's a mid to low table bully. His performances against top table teams in the Portuguese league is not great, and I think you can just take that in consideration and compare the strength of the Premier League with the Portuguese league. I don't think he's going to be like terrible, but I don't think he's going to net in that many goals. If he cracks 20 goals a season, that would be a massive success, of course, for Arsenal, but I don't think he will. I think you're looking at maybe a 10 goal a season player in the Premier League. So that's the risk with Gyökeres is there's no guarantee. Of course, he hasn't done it in the Premier League. Of course, he had history in the Premier League, but he hasn't had his success in English football yet. Odegaard is magic. I mean, I think the thing with Odegaard is he, of course, plays fantasy football himself. So if you're going to pick an Arsenal player, I would go for Odegaard. He's the main creative player in that team. He's going to link up with Saka. He's going to play the ball to Martinelli, and he's probably going to play the ball to Gyökeres. He can score from outside the box, inside the box. He's a great player. And of course, he's a fantasy football manager himself. He probably picks himself. So he's going to try and get those points. And then another thing to look out for is Saka better than Salah. Saka last season did not score many points, but that's because he was injured for a large part of the season. I think Saka might be a better pickup than Mohamed Salah. Salah being a 14.5 million pick on in that midfield spot, while Saka is only at 10.5, comparable with the likes of Cole Palmer. And I think Saka will average more points a season than Palmer because Saka's in that more advanced role. He's going to get the goals, he's going to get the assist, he's going to be the main man here in this Arsenal team. As for this match, I'm predicting a 2-1 Manchester United win. Listen, Manchester United do good in big fixtures. Okay, FPL picks to keep in mind. Patrick Drogu. Here we go. Here we can see some advanced stats over the last year for Patrick Drogu. And what you'll see here is what I want to show you guys is his progressive carries. He's in the 93rd percentile of progressive carries. This guy is going to win penalties, and I suspect he's going to get a shit ton of assists this season. Of course, not Saka levels, but for a fullback, I think he's going to be one of the top fullbacks in the league this year. His defensive contributions are not bad. He looks very strong in the air. I want to show you guys also, we can see here his touches in the attacking penalty box. There's 3 per 90, and that puts him in a 95 percentile. He's still very young. If he's going to get that touches in the penalty area, I suspect he's going to score. I suspect he's going to get a few assists with the likes of a Sesko. Uh, Not just Sesko, let's take also into account Mbeumo and Cunha. I think Patrick Drogo is going to be one of the best pickups for any fantasy Premier League manager this year. Another top pickup, of course, is Moises Caicedo. And yes, what I was talking about earlier, his defensive contributions being 455. That's quite high for any player in the whole league. I think he's going to benefit massively from the new point changes. He, of course, is only a 5.5 midfielder. Last year got a total of 98 points. And it might not seem that high, but I think with the point contributions, he's going to get into that 150, 170 point tally quite easy. Let's take a look at my team for game week 1. In the back line, I went for Jordan Pickford against Leeds. He might get a clean sheet, and Pickford being the highest point scoring goalkeeper in the league, that's because of his saves. Not just because Everton is going to get you clean sheets, they're probably not, but Jordan Pickford gets you saves. And then I went for Dubravka. He's super cheap at the moment. He's going to play for Burnley. Maybe if Burnley turns out to be a good defensive side, maybe even a team that will look to survive this season, Dubravka will be able to steal at 4.5 million. I went for Milinkovic, another 4.5 million defender. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Looking at point totals, he scored goals. Last year, he scored more goals in the Premier League than any of United's forwards. So Milinkovic for me is a no-brainer. I went for Richards. He's a consistent starter in that Crystal Palace team. Then I went for Pau Torres. Both actually, Pau Torres and Richards, I picked for one simple reason. The goalkeepers behind him. These two players might benefit from their goalkeepers being world-class goalkeepers, snatching them a few clean sheets throughout the season. Of course, like I told you guys, I'm going for Patrick Drogu. I think he's going to do bits this season. Listen, it is a risk. That's a risk I'm going to take. And then Mickey van der Ven. Tottenham, of course, playing against Burnley. I would have liked to get more Tottenham players, but I'm not sure about who's going to play, who's not going to play, how they're going to play. I do know Mickey van der Ven is going to play. He scored midweek against PSG. Maybe he'll score against Burnley. At the very least, I'm looking at the clean sheet for Mickey van der Ven. In midfield, I went for Anderson from Nottingham Forest, Declan Rice, and Bruno Fernandes. Anderson again, very strong season last year, and he's also going to be, just like Caicedo, a player that's going to benefit from the defensive contributions this season. Declan Rice, on the other hand, with the addition of Christian Norgard and Martin Zubimendi, I think Declan Rice is going to play more progressive this season. So we're going to see him on the assist table and scoring tables a lot this year. Declan Rice is a top pick for 6.5 million. And then Bruno Fernandes, one of the best players in the league. He's going to play every single minute this season. Easy pick. Then, of course, you have to go with Cole Palmer. If you're not going with Mo Salah game week 1, you have to go with Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer against Crystal Palace, like I mentioned before. He might be the main man in that Chelsea team. He's probably going to score against Crystal Palace. If not, put your money on the assist. Great point scorer come game week 1. And then I went for Florian Wirtz at Liverpool. I was looking at Liverpool players to have in my team. I'm not sold on their defense. Salah's a bit too expensive. So I went for Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz, newcomer. His price is still a bit low on Fantasy Premier League. Maybe take a look at him. He's going to be at the heart of all the goals, all the actions in that Liverpool attack. And this Liverpool side's attack, I think it's the best in the league. I think their defense is quite shit, but their attack is quite strong. I think Florian Wirtz is going to be a massive point contributor this season. Let's take a look at my forward line. I went for Haaland. Nothing more to be said about Haaland. Haaland starts his season strong. He has a shit ton of goals against Wolves. Worth noting, though, that he hasn't scored away at the Molineux yet. All his goals against Wolves, and I think it's 8 goals in 5 matches. All 8 goals came at the Etihad. He's yet to score at the Molineux. With that being said, he usually starts very strong. So I'll, I'm between him, Palmer, and Wirtz as my captain, but I'm going to stick with Haaland. I think City is just going to be very strong this year. So let's move on. This player I'm only going to have for game week 1. Looking to make a transfer as soon as I can. The only problem is his price point is so low. It's going to be a problem switching players around. I might need to sacrifice 2 players to get the striker that I actually want, Ekitike. But Liverpool's starting fixtures are quite hard, so I went for Jarrod Bowen from West Ham, of course. He's going to play against Sunderland. He's a top player. I'm just not convinced on West Ham. I'm going to look to transfer him out as soon as possible. I don't know where yet. And then, of course, Mark Guéhi, not the defender from Crystal Palace, but the striker from Chelsea on loan to Sunderland. He's very cheap. I think he's 4.5, and he might be the star man at the Sunderland side. There's also, of course, a problem of him not playing any fixtures. But for 4.5, we can take that risk. And then my starting team for the weekend, we can see here, very basic. I went for all the midfields and, of course, 2 strikers on top. I think this is the meta of many of the managers. Defenders, uh, even me, I'm looking. The problem that I might have in my defense is I don't have a premium pick. I wanted to go Guardiola, but I saw an article saying that he might not even play the first fixture of the match because he picked up a knock in training. So I swapped out very, very quickly. And thus, I don't really have guaranteed point scorers in that defense. Milinkovic, Van der Ven, and Drogu, all three of these should be starters. So at the very least, I should pick up the 2 points from each. And then I'm hoping for a Van der Ven goal. I'm hoping for a Van der Ven and Milinkovic getting those defensive contribution points. And I'm looking for a Patrick Drogu assist at the very least. Midfield, I don't think there's much to be said. Maybe my two weakest points is, of course, Anderson and Rice. Not progressive midfielders, not scoring goals, not getting a ton of assists. But I'm looking at that defensive contributions, baby. And then same for Bruno Fernandes. I saw a article detailing with this new defensive points coming in, Bruno Fernandes is going to be one of the highest benefactors from the point changes. So yeah, I think that's it. I used Fantasy Football Hub to put in my team, let AI review it for me and give me what they thought. Here we can see I got an 83 out of 100 score. It's going to be a link in the description for you guys. Disclaimer, I'm not sponsored, but please do use my affiliate link. And then, of course, I used fantasyfootballhub.co.uk again to see what would be my predicted points for the game week 1. And we saw with this team I just showed you guys, it's going to give me a predicted points of 62.8. It's not bad. It's giving me an 87% rating for game week 1. When looking at players to bring in, high predicted point scorers, we can see here Jeremy Frimpong from Liverpool. It's a premium pick, and he has a 4.5 predicted points for game week 1. So that's something to keep in mind. He is, like I said, a premium pick. The problem being those first three fixtures are quite hard. So I'll be looking to bring in Frimpong for game week 4, maybe even wait until game week 5. And then we can see, yeah, here's a team that I also tried to edit. I'm looking at different options here. This team is predicted to score a nice 65.5 goals on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Main changes here, of course, being I brought in Mo Salah instead of Cole Palmer and the Johnny Reyners from City. I dropped Haaland to get Ollie Watkins, Gerald Bowen, and Ekatike. So this is a bit more attacking or forward heavy. Ekatike, you can see here 5.8 points for his debut match. That's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. I think Gyökeres might be at 5 points, or not even in the 5. I think he's like a 5.1 predicted score for game week 1. Of course, his fixture is harder than Ekatike, but overall, Fantasy Football Hub seems to think that Ekatike is going to be a great fit into the Premier League this season. We saw Mo Salah. Mo Salah has the highest predicted points for game week 1 with an 8.6. That's no surprise. With the form he's been on last season, I think until he proves the AI wrong, the AI is going to have him as the number 1 pick. Uh, Here's the thing though. Here's why I put Wirtz into my team. Predicted game week 1 points 6.1. 6.1 for a debutant. That's quite high. But let's take a look at another team I tried to generate to get that predicted points a bit higher. Instead, I got it lower. I got it to 63.0. Here we can see the main changes being Sal's in goal. He's going to score, or predicted to score, 3.8. I brought in Jeremy Frimpong early, and we can see here a 4.5 point for a defender. That's not bad. In midfield, I kept Palmer. Palmer has a 6.9. And look next to him, Florian Wirtz with a 6.1. Not a huge difference between Palmer and Wirtz. And if you look at that price point, that's a 1.5 million swing. Or no, I'm bad at math. That's a 2 million swing. So if you're going to pick a midfielder and you don't want to pick Palmer, Florian Wirtz is a very, very good pickup. And then I chose Brian Mbumo at Manchester United. He had a 5.1 predicted score. Worth noting it's exactly the same for Cunha. Cunha and Mbumo both are 5.1 for the game week 1 predicted scores. Both are 8 million. I would not do it though. I did it for this, but I won't do it. The problem being Manchester United's first 10 fixtures are going to be very, very tough. They have to face in the first 10. I think they need to go through Arsenal for game week 1. Then they're going to face Liverpool, but later they're going to face Chelsea and Man City all before game week 10. So after game week 10, when United have consistent mid-table to below lower half of the table matchups, Mbumo or Cunha is going to be a key pickups, and even keep an eye out for our guy Benjamin Sesko. Of course, going for Declan Rice again, 4.5. Look at this, Victor Gyökeres, also debutant. I'm going to flip back to Ekitike in a moment. Gyökeres only have 4.8 predicted points. Gyökeres only have 4.8 predicted points in game week 1, while Ekitike has a 5.8. Of course, the fixtures are more difficult for Arsenal, but even the AI is not completely convinced by Gyökeres. Gerard Bowen again with 5.2, and then Christian Wood for 5.5 this weekend. Christian Wood might be a very, very good pickup, and I'm going to show you why as well. If you're like me and you think Chris Wood came onto the pitch, he scored a ton of goals last season, but is he a consistent goal scorer? Is he somebody who's going to score a ton of points for my fantasy Premier League team, or is he just hyped because he had one good season? This is Christian Wood's past couple of seasons. Look at the main thing here: 14 goals and 20 starts and 1,800 games played. That season, he scored 131 points. And then, of course, last season, he got more playing time. He scored 20 goals, 3 assists, netting 200 points. He scored 200 points last season, and he's only 7.5 million to snatch up. Christian Wood, I think, is going to be a top pickup this season. I'm not going for him yet, but yeah, I still have time to change, so I might swap out Wood for Gerard Bowen. If we take a look at my starting team, I still have zero point 0.5 in the bank, so going from Bowen to Wood, that's going to put me an extra million in the bank. Going to make my transfer stories a bit easier going forward. Okay, thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe and let me know who you got for your Game Week 1 Fantasy Premier League team. And let me know what you thought about my takes. Let me know what you think about Florian Wirtz. Let me know what you think about Chris Wood. And who do you think is going to be the massive benefactor from this new points overhaul for defensive contributions? Let me know in the comments. So I've been Chris from Touchline Reports. Thank you.